Loving kindness is when we stop measuring. For these moments of loving kindness, we stop measuring between good and bad. We stop measuring between justice and injustice. We stop measuring between even right and wrong. And instead, we embrace the moment as if it's some big cosmic cause and effect relationship. These people couldn't have done anything otherwise. We have in Buddhism this wonderful simile, just like a mother loves her only child, such is the feeling of loving kindness. It doesn't matter whether the child is right or wrong. It does not matter if the child is good or bad. It doesn't matter if the child has treated you justly or unjustly. When you look at a parent's love towards their children, that is something which does not measure right nor wrong, which is beyond good and evil. Because even evil kids, if there is such a thing, bad children, delinquent children, rotten children, monsters, even then their mums love them. My mother still loves me. But what we're saying there is something which can actually transcend right, wrong, good and bad, evil and not evil. And this is a beautiful thing called loving kindness. It does take a shift of the paradigm, just a jump of the way one thinks, to really understand that such loving kindness can be possible, and is manifested in this world today. You see such people. What loving kindness is, and this is my favourite way of defining loving kindness, is the story of my father. I was only about 13, 14. Maybe last time I said it was 15, last time I said it was 12. I can't remember, it was a long time ago. But I don't care, it was roughly about that time. When he took me aside and he said to me, "Son, whatever you do in your life, the door of my house will always be open to you." To cut the long story short, I realised he didn't mean his house, which was just a very, very poor apartment in London. There was nothing much to open the door to anyone. In fact, that usually, as I said, we'd usually leave the door open in those days. We weren't afraid of burglars. In fact, we were trying to encourage burglars so they may look at our house, it was so poor, and leave something for us. So he was actually opening his door to me, so I could come into his heart any time I wanted, no matter what I did, who I was, how I behaved, good or bad. It was a loving kindness. It was something which was transcending good and bad, right and evil, justice and injustice. It was a shift in the way I looked at life. Because before I thought I'd have to be good before I was loved. I'd have to be right before I was respected. I had to be just, before I could be embraced in the community. And there was somebody who was saying, no. It's nothing to do with all of that. Love is unconditional. Unconditional acceptance, unconditional forgiveness, something which is bigger. And it taught me that paradigm shift. It took a long time for me because I had to contemplate that, reflect upon that for a long time, especially when I was a young monk in Thailand, remembering that and hearing what I heard from the great monks about loving kindness. I went to these amazing monks I was so privileged to hang out with, not just Ajahn Chah, but other great monks. And one of the things I always remember about these great monks is you always felt so safe in their presence. You always felt as if that you were always accepted. And even though I wasn't the best of monks, even though I was very stupid sometimes and had all my defilements and stupidity, even though you always felt that in their presence they'd never do anything to harm you, to hurt you in any which way. That's why you gave yourself up to them as teachers. You trusted them. You trusted that they would never exploit that relationship, they would never harm you, that whatever they said or did must be for your best interest. And that's again why such teachers had so many disciples. Because there was that trust. The door of my heart always open, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. It was something greater than I'd been used to, a different way of looking at life. Before I thought that all wrongs had to be righted, that all people who abused me had to teach them a lesson, had to settle scores. And there was saying there are no scores. Right and wrong. Who's right and who's wrong? I'm still of the opinion, as a monk, meditating for many years, understanding the way my mind works, even people like Adolf Hitler, I'm sure that he thought he was doing the right thing. Even though now we all know that it was a wrong thing, it was a stupid thing. At the time we always think we're doing the right thing. Even like sometimes people I know who've committed adultery, even though it creates so much harm to their family, at the time they think they're doing the right thing. Have you ever noticed that? You see, what's actually happening here, what's right and wrong, is actually bent. It's distorted by what we want to feel is right. By our background of what we hope is right, what actually suits us is right. That's why this idea of right and wrong, sometimes you've got to be very, very careful with that. What is right is usually what I think is right, what suits me, what suits my pleasure, what suits my pride. That's what's right. So we have to be very careful about this right and wrong business and go a bit deeper than that and have this wonderful loving kindness which can transcend that. What that loving kindness does, it transcends that to have this wonderful acceptance. Now, I'm going to focus now just on acceptance. What's the opposite of acceptance? What's the opposite of embracing? It's not just hatred. It's this other word called control. Because loving kindness, metta, the door of my heart's open to you no matter what you ever do, is very, very close to what we call letting go. Embracing. Being at peace with. Being detached. Can you see the similarities with loving kindness? The door of my heart's open to me. Because my father was saying, you're my son, I'll love you no matter what you do. I'm not going to control you. I'm not attached to your actions or your behavior. There's something about this which is I'm not going to control you anymore. As a son, I brought you up so far, now I'm going to love you no matter what you do. You can see it's a lack of control of others. It's an embracing, it's a letting go. Controlling our environment, controlling our friends, controlling the people we live with. That's where anger and hate comes from. You want your husband to be like this, to be like that, and you spend a lot of time trying to control them, thinking if you can get them just right, then you'll be happy. How many people have been living with their husband for so long, trying to get them just like this, just like that? Isn't it frustrating? Isn't it a hopeless task? Until after a while, you realize that that's not what love is. That's not the way you can live with another person. It has to be, husband, the door of my heart is open to you, no matter what you do. No matter who you are. I made this comment a few years ago. I was just wondering why it is that people get married, have relationships, and they are just so selective of their partners in life. You go to a great deal of trouble choosing the person you're going to live with. In fact, you check them out more than you'd even check out the car you're going to buy. You even test drive them just to make sure you get a good model. If it's a second-hand one, you've got to check it's been serviced. whatever it is. But you actually really look into it, don't you? Do you check your children before they come into your life? Do you choose them? Do you even test drive your kids? Let's try this one. No, thank you. It's not like going to the cat's home or the dog's home to pick out a pet when you get kids. You've got no choice. Why is it that the way we love our children is completely different than the way we love our husband or wife? When the children do something wrong, you get a bit upset, but you don't stop speaking to them for a week or 2 weeks, do you? You don't get that upset. Because the loving kindness to a child is something which transcends good and bad, right and wrong. You want to sort of help your children, make them into a good person. You try and guide them through life. What I'm saying here is there's something which is even bigger than what you want to guide. Wouldn't it be wonderful if husbands and wives could look at each other like that? To say, the door of my heart is open to you no matter what you ever do, that you look upon your husband or your child with the same amount of love, no more, no less, than a child of yours. You try and guide your husband, try and guide your wife, but that's all, not controlling them. Because when we control, we get into this terrible opposite of loving kindness called ill will, hatred, anger, all coming from wanting to control other people. It also comes when we look deeply into the same attitude we have towards ourselves, control. Which is why when we talk about loving kindness, it's so hard for some people to practice loving kindness towards themselves. It's one of these amazing blockages which people have in Western countries, or people in Asian countries who've been educated in Western ways also have this terrible job in trying to forgive themselves, trying to accept themselves. We've got this great psychological syndrome of lack of self-esteem, depression. People commit suicide these days. If they're not suicide, they're depressed and have to take Prozac. It's much better to come to the Buddhist Society of West Australia instead of killing yourself or taking Prozac or getting depressed, because here you're finding out why. Where is this actually coming from? Where it's coming from is a sense of control. Trying to control yourself. Having an idea of good and bad about yourself. Measuring. I gave a talk at the monastery on Wednesday night. It arose from a lovely question which I got, I think, last Saturday afternoon here on meditation. Someone quoted Lord Kelvin, who was a physicist a couple of centuries ago. And Lord Kelvin said, if you can't measure something, you can't control it. What he was actually meaning was that by developing ways of measuring the world, we can get some idea of controlling things, which is at the basis of modern technology. That's where science and technology meet. By learning how to measure, to weigh, then we can actually think we can control our world. Without measurement, there's no control. That's a wonderful saying, because that's right on, but you missed the most important thing. He wanted to measure to get more control. And look what our society has built now. In the opposite way, that Buddhism is saying, stop all this measuring business. When you stop all the measuring, then you stop controlling as well. When you stop measuring good and bad, right and wrong, I'm right and they're wrong, better or worse, then you find that so much of this controlling thing in the world disappears. Look at yourself. Are you good? Are you bad? Are you a good meditator or a bad meditator? Are you a kind person or an angry person? Are you intelligent or are you stupid? We all have our ideas of what we are. We measure ourselves, and from that measurement comes control. From control comes ill will about that part of ourselves which we can't control, which we don't like, which we hate, which we're embarrassed about, because we can't control it. And we get into all this psychological stuff. Wouldn't it be wonderful, just the way we look at our children, without measuring, I love you no matter what you do, who you are. Like my father said to me, the door of my heart's open to you. I'm not going to measure you. I'm not going to control you. I'm going to let you in. You can see that measuring is where we start control, where a lot of the problems start to come from. Just as a mother loves her only child, doesn't matter what that child does, I will always love you. You can always come into my heart. There is acceptance, harmony, non-measuring. But we've got to start with ourselves. Loving kindness softens you. It softens the measurer. It softens the controller. It means instead of wanting to control the whole world, to control my family, to control myself, we accept ourselves, therefore we let go. It's wonderful having a bit of peace inside your heart. The realizing you don't have to be so damn perfect before you can be at peace with yourself. Just like as a mother loves her only child, the child doesn't need to be perfect to get the mother's love. So you do not need to be so perfect to deserve your own love. There comes a time in every person's life, if not this life, the next life, or the next life, sometime in the great cosmic cycles of your existence, where you just look at yourself and you get the guts, the courage to stop all the judging and all the measuring, which is completely unfair anyway, and say, no matter who I am, no matter what I've done, throughout my whole history, the door of my heart is open to me. Come in. With that forgiveness, the whole world changes. You can actually start to see other people in a different way, without measuring them, without controlling them. You can be with them, just like you are with children, just like you are with cats and dogs. Why is it that we always have these wonderful relationships with our pets? Maybe we can't live with a man, we can't live with a woman. We can always live with our cats and dogs. Why is that? Because you know you can't control these animals. And you let them just jump up on your bed. You just had a shower and they lick you all over. They drool over your clothes when you're just about to go out. Just dogs and cats. Because you don't control them. They're just being a dog, they're just being a cat. Politicians are just being politicians. Husbands are just being husbands. Wives are just being wives. What do you expect? You are just being you. So when we stop controlling, stop measuring, then we can start doing loving kindness towards ourselves. When we start doing loving kindness towards ourselves, at least spend some of our day doing loving kindness. The door of my heart's always open to me. You find the benefits are that because of kindness, you don't measure the world so strictly into black and white, good or bad. You find by developing loving kindness towards yourself that your judgments of other people become far less severe. Because you do loving kindness towards yourself, you find that you can forgive because you're not judging so much. Because you're doing loving kindness towards yourself, you find that you can accept life more as it is. Even accept some of the parts of life which before you found so difficult, so hard. Because of loving kindness towards yourself, you can even accept sickness because you don't judge it so badly. Because you have loving kindness towards yourself, you can even accept death when it happens, because you're not so judgmental to life. I've often asked people, do you love life? And people say, yeah, I love life. I say, really? Or just half of life, the nice part? Do you love all of life? The sick times, the times when you get overworked in the office, the times when you get old, the times when loved ones disappear from you. Do you love that part of life as well? Do you love life when it's about time for you to die? Do you really love life? Because all of life, starting from birth to death, do you love it all, or just love half of it and hate the other half? If you really love life, if you want to be at peace, we can actually be at peace with all of life. When we say, life, the door of my heart is open to you. No matter who you are, what you do, come in. Life, the door of my heart is open to you. All of you, not just a nice part, all of you. Then you find you're at peace with life. Then all the problems have ended. Then there's no control. good and bad, are seen for what they really are, just skillful, unskillful, just part of this great cosmos, like night and day. In the big picture, when we see it from above, as it were, we find, yes, thank you. Thank you, not just for the good part, for the other part as well. That's what Tessa does. That's what we learned from. That's what's made us what we are. The door of my heart is open to everything, no matter what. Then you stop controlling the world. You stop controlling life. You've let go. That which is the self, the controller, disappears. That's why with such degree of loving kindness, there we understand deep Buddhist teachings like non-self. In Gavin Simpson's article, he'd said there's a problem with non-self. The problem is with the sense of self. When there's a sense of self, there's a sense of controlling. Me, what I need, what I want, my requirements. When there's a sense of self, when one lets go of that sense of self to non-self, no control, no measuring, then the door of my heart is open to the whole of life.